Growing up, my world was confined within the silent walls of a strict and isolated home. Under the watchful eyes of my family, life passed in shades of gray, with every action monitored and every expression stifled. It was a childhood where laughter was rare and spontaneity was nothing more than a distant dream. My grandmother, Remy, was a beacon of change in my rigid existence. She recognized the suffocating environment and, with a heart full of resolve and kindness, rescued me from it when I was just 13. Under her nurturing care, I discovered a world vibrant with love and warmth, a stark contrast to my earlier years. This newfound freedom allowed me to blossom. I found joy in soft laughter, embraced freedom over restrictions, and chose love instead of fear. Yet, the shadows of my strict upbringing lingered, molding me into a shy, modest woman. I found solace in the digital realm, choosing web design as a career. It was a perfect fit, allowing me to channel my creativity into the online world from the safety of my home. As I turned 30, Remy believed it was time for me to expand my horizons further. She introduced me to Devin, a man slightly older than me, known for his charm and gentle demeanor. Our first meeting took place in a cozy diner, filled with the inviting aroma of coffee and a soft murmur of conversations, which provided a comforting atmosphere. Devin's arrival felt like the beginning of a new chapter. "Your grandmother has told me so much about you, Katie. You're quite the artist with your web designs," Devin complimented, his voice smooth and his smile reassuring. His praise made me blush, a reaction I wasn't used to. "Thank you, Devin. Design truly is my passion," I replied, slowly easing into the conversation. Our connection was cautious yet genuine, like the delicate rays of dawn breaking through the darkness. Devin's words were soothing, easing years of built-up caution and reserve. "Katie, your modesty is refreshing. It's like finding a quiet cove in a stormy sea," he remarked, holding my gaze with a warm intensity that reached deep within me. In the days that followed, Devin and I explored our budding relationship through simple yet profound encounters. We shared long conversations over coffee, leisurely walks in the park, and laughter that lingered in the air long after we had parted. On a crisp autumn afternoon, as we walked through a park with leaves crunching underfoot, Devin shared a spontaneous idea. "Have you ever been to the old Wilson's farm? They have an apple orchard that looks straight out of a postcard this time of year," he suggested, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. I smiled, intrigued by the prospect. "I can't say I have. My adventures have mostly been limited to the digital world, you know," I responded, my curiosity piqued. He chuckled, a sound that resonated with warmth. "Well, I guess it's about time we changed that." As we ventured into new experiences together, life became more vivid and the colors around me brighter. Each moment with Devin opened up a world where I felt more alive, slowly stepping beyond the confines of my once restricted world. "Let's shake things up a bit. What do you say about going to pick apples this Saturday? I hear it's the perfect way to spend a crisp fall morning," Devin suggested one evening, his idea lighting up our usual, comfortable routine with the promise of a new adventure. Agreeing to this plan felt like a bold step away from my past, a past cloaked in silence and restrictions, toward a life bursting with color and vitality. As days merged into weeks, my connection with Devin deepened, evolving beyond mere shared interests or physical attraction. It became a bond forged in understanding and appreciation for the true selves we both presented. One serene evening, as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Devin broke the silence with words that warmed my heart. "Katie, these past weeks with you have been incredible. You have this quiet strength, this grace about you. It's rare and absolutely beautiful," he said, his words enveloping me in a sense of warmth and appreciation. His compliment caught me off guard, bringing a blush to my cheeks. "Thank you, Devin. With you, it's easy to be myself. To open up," I managed to reply. He took my hand, his touch gentle yet confident. "That's all I ask, Katie. Just be yourself, because who you are is truly amazing." I was thinking, maybe, just maybe, we could turn this us into something more permanent, something lasting. He proposed his words a mixture of a question and a promise. Looking into his eyes, I saw not only the man I had grown to love, but also a future filled with laughter, understanding, and love. I'd like that, Devin. More than you know, I responded, my heart lighter and more hopeful than it had been in years. However, life took an unexpected turn when I moved in with Devin and his mother, Mrs. Margo. The home I had imagined as a sanctuary quickly turned into a realm of stringent expectations and sharp criticisms. The very first morning in my new home underscored this new reality. I was in the kitchen trying to make a good impression by preparing breakfast when Mrs. Margo entered, her gaze scrutinizing every corner like a hawk. Katie, let's get one thing straight. You're part of this family now, and in this house, we have rules. You're going to take care of the cooking and the cleaning. Got it? Her tone was sharp, brooking no argument. Taken aback, I could only nod. Yes, Mrs. Margo, I understand, I replied, my voice a mere whisper. Her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the kitchen. I expect things to be done right. I run a tight ship here, no slacking, she declared before leaving the room, leaving me to digest the stark reality of my new life. Each day became a relentless cycle of household chores. I would wake up early, cook breakfast, clean, work on my web design projects, and cook again. It felt as though my existence had been reduced to serving the needs of the house. Devin, whom I had thought would be my partner and protector, seemed oblivious to the strain I was under. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I decided it was time to voice my concerns. Devin, I need to talk to you about something, I began, my hands nervously twisting a dish towel. He looked up from his laptop, his expression one of mild annoyance. What's up, Katie? It's about your mom, I started, hoping to bridge the gap between my expectations and my new reality. Overwhelmed by the ever-growing demands of housework that seemed to fall squarely on my shoulders, I finally expressed my frustrations to Devin one evening. It's a lot to handle, and it feels like it's all just expected of me, I said hurriedly, hoping he would understand. Devin briefly glanced away from his computer, responding nonchalantly, well, Mom has her ways. It's how things are here. You'll adapt. But this wasn't what I wanted to hear. Devin, that's not fair. I'm not here just to handle chores. I work too, and I need my own space and time, I insisted, feeling a newfound courage stir within me. Devin exhaled deeply, clearly annoyed. Katie, don't blow this out of proportion. Mom runs the house. Just keep the peace, okay? His dismissive tone was a sharp reminder that my needs and my fatigue were seemingly insignificant here. As time passed, the constraints tightened further. It wasn't only about the chores anymore. My earnings from web design, once a symbol of my independence, became the new focal point for the Margo's control. One evening, as I sat working at the dining table, Devin and Mrs. Margo confronted me with a conversation I wasn't prepared for. We need to discuss your work, Katie, Devin began, his voice unusually grave. Confused, I looked up. What about my work? Your income, Mrs. Margo cut in, her tone authoritative. It's time for you to start contributing financially to the household. After all, you live here. My stomach churned with anxiety. But I do contribute. I manage the house, the meals. That's not enough, Devin interjected. We mean financially. Your earnings should be added to the family account. It's only right. The blatant unfairness of their demand hit me hard. But that's my money, Devin. I earned it. I have bills, personal expenses. Mrs. Margo scoffed. Expenses? What could be more important than contributing to this family? Your role is to support us, just as we provide for you. Devin agreed, his eyes cold and distant.
It's settled then.
Your earnings will go into the family account. I'll handle the finances. I felt utterly trapped. My financial independence was being eroded, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. Devin, this isn't fair. I should have a say in how my own money is used, I pleaded. He shrugged, his gesture chillingly indifferent. Life isn't always fair, Katie. You're part of this family, and that's how we do things here. Mrs. Margo's piercing gaze ensured her words hit hard. You'll be grateful later. We're teaching you what it means to be part of a family, to be a proper wife. Left alone with my thoughts, the reality sank in. My finances, my hard-earned money, were under their control. Trapped in the Margo household, my life had spiraled into an endless cycle of servitude. The control over my finances exerted by Devin and his mother was suffocating. Once a symbol of my independence, my earnings were now firmly in their grasp. Faced with an unbearable situation, I felt powerless. Desperate for understanding, I turned to my laptop, the gateway to my professional community. On the web design forum, I found a sympathetic ear in Eliza, a fellow designer to whom I could confide my troubles. I confided in Eliza, a friend I'd made online, about the troubling situation at home. Devin and his mom are controlling everything, even my earnings. I don't know what to do, I typed, my vision blurred by tears. Almost immediately, Eliza's response appeared on my screen. Katie, that's not right. They're manipulating you. That's financial abuse, she pointed out sharply. The word abuse echoed in my mind, feeling both alien and painfully accurate. Abuse? I typed back, grappling with the realization. Yes, abuse, Katie. You need to protect yourself. Start by educating yourself on psychological abuse and financial control. Knowledge is power, Eliza advised. Taking her advice seriously, I began immersing myself in psychology books, articles about financial abuse, and stories of people who had faced similar challenges. The more I learned, the clearer it became that Devin and Mrs. Margo were not just overbearing. They were abusers, manipulating and controlling me to keep me submissive. One evening, while deeply absorbed in a book about psychological growth, Mrs. Margo stormed into my room, eyeing the book title with visible contempt. What's this nonsense you're reading, Katie? She demanded, her voice dripping with disdain. It's a book on personal growth, Mrs. Margo. I responded, my voice steadier and infused with a newfound strength. She scoffed. Personal growth? Don't fill your head with such rubbish. Your place is here, taking care of this family, not reading silly books. But her words, which would have once sent me spiraling into doubt, now bounced off me. I had begun to see through their manipulations, to understand the dynamics of control and abuse. Later that evening, I attempted to discuss this with Devin, hoping he might understand. Your mother thinks my reading is rubbish, I said, seeking his support. Devin was dismissive. Mom's right, Katie. You're getting ideas above your station. Focus on your duties here. That's what's important. His words were a crushing blow, yet they only fueled my determination. It was clear I was alone in this fight, but I was no longer the timid, compliant Katie they thought they knew. The knowledge I had armed myself with was now my weapon, and I was ready to use it. Life at the Margos had pushed me to my limits. I had been enduring silently, suffering under their control and manipulation. But everything changed the day fate intervened in the most unexpected way. It was a regular morning, and I was out running errands, lost in my thoughts when suddenly a car sped around the corner. Before I could react, everything went black. I woke up in a sterile hospital room, my body aching and my mind foggy. As my vision cleared, I saw Devin and Mrs. Margo standing by my bedside. But their expressions were not of concern or worry. They were filled with irritation and anger. Katie, what were you thinking, wandering around like that? Do you have any idea how inconvenient this is for us? Devin's voice was harsh, devoid of any warmth. Mrs. Margo chimed in, her words sharp and cold. Yes, and now who's going to take care of the house? The cooking, the cleaning? You've put us in quite a bind, Katie. I lay there, stunned, not by the pain from my injuries, but by the sheer lack of empathy from the people I had been living with. I'm sorry, I managed to whisper, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Devin's face twisted into a scowl. Sorry doesn't cut it, Katie. We need you back on your feet, taking care of your responsibilities. This little stunt of yours is unacceptable. Mrs. Margo nodded in agreement, her eyes scanning me with disdain. Absolutely. The coldness of their responses only solidified my resolve. It was time for a change, and I knew I couldn't go back to living under their control. Once I was back, they expected me to make up for lost time, showing no concern for my well-being. Their words ignited a fire within me. This was the turning point. I realized I was nothing more than a tool for them, useful only until worn out. Enough, I declared, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm not your maid, not your cook, not your ATM. I am a human being, and I deserve respect, care, and empathy, none of which you've shown. Devin's eyes widened, taken aback by my defiance. Katie, you're not thinking straight. You need to calm down and remember your duties, your place in this family. But I was finished being dictated to about my place. My place, I countered, my voice resolute, is not here with you. I deserve better, and I will find better. The doctor entered at that moment, easing the tension briefly as he detailed my injuries and the lengthy recovery ahead. Devin and Mrs. Margo's faces fell as they considered the implications. Weeks of convalescence, mounting medical expenses, and the absence of their compliant housekeeper. Devin, frustration coloring his tone, turned to me. If you think you're going to sit back and enjoy a vacation at our expense, you're mistaken. If you're not back on your feet and fulfilling your duties in a month, consider this marriage over. For the first time, his threat didn't scare me. It liberated me. Devin, I replied, a faint smile on my bruised lips. I'm ready for that divorce. It's the best news I've heard in months. Their shocked expressions were the last I saw before they stormed out of the room. Lying in the hospital bed, I realized that the crash hadn't just broken my bones, it had shattered the chains that bound me. A couple of days after their visit, a nurse wheeled in a small cart with my personal belongings, a bag Devin had left for me. Among the items was my laptop, my window to the world, and a lifeline to my independence. As I slowly, painfully opened the laptop, the familiar screen greeted me like an old friend. I was about to undertake the most crucial project of my life, my liberation. I began by drafting an email to my lawyer, detailing the years of financial control, emotional manipulation, and recent threats from Devin and his mother. My fingers trembled, but with each word typed, I felt stronger and more in control. A few days later, Devin came to visit, his demeanor a mix of anger and disbelief. Katie, what's this nonsense about a lawyer? You think you can take me on? He scoffed, his voice echoing off the sterile hospital walls. It's not nonsense, Devin. It's the truth. I'm done being your puppet. I'm taking back my life, money, and dignity, I replied, my resolve unwavering. He laughed, a cold, harsh sound. You don't have the guts. You're nothing without me, without us. But I was no longer the old Katie. Watch me, Devin. You and your mother have controlled and used me for long enough. Those days are over. His face reddened, a vein throbbing in his neck. You'll regret this, Katie. You'll come crawling back. I shook my head, a small smile playing on my lips. I'd rather crawl through fire than come back to you. After Devin stormed out, the days blended into weeks. My body healed, and with each day, my spirit grew stronger, fueled by a newfound freedom and the resolve to never return to the life I once endured. But more importantly, my spirit was mending too. I spent hours in that hospital room, my makeshift war room, reading, learning, and preparing for the battle ahead. That hospital room, once a symbol of my vulnerability, had transformed into a bastion of strength. The day I was discharged marked the commencement of a new chapter in my life. Grandma Remy, frail yet within spirit unyielding, was by my side as I stepped out of the hospital. Her eyes, brimming with tears of pride and relief, affirmed that I was on the right track. Grandma, I'm scared, but I'm ready, I confided, my voice more firm than I felt. She squeezed my hand reassuringly. I know, my dear. And you're not alone. We're in this together. The drive back to Grandma Remy's house was enveloped in a contemplative silence, charged with determination and hope. The old Katie had faded away, replaced by a woman ready to reclaim her life, one decisive step at a time. On the morning of the court hearing, Grandma Remy and I sat at her kitchen table, an unspoken understanding passing between us. "Katie, are you ready for this?" she inquired, her tone steady yet tinged with concern. I nodded, drawing strength from her unwavering support. "I am, Grandma. It's time to end this once and for all." At the courthouse, the air was thick with tension. Devin and Mrs. Margo were already there, their faces set in masks of arrogance and disbelief. They still couldn't grasp that the once submissive Katie was now challenging them. As we passed by, Devin's mocking voice cut through the air. "You think you can win this, Katie? You're just a nobody." I halted, turning to face him with an unflinching gaze. "I am somebody, Devin. And today, you'll see just how much you've underestimated me." The court proceedings flew by in a blur, testimonies given, evidence presented. My lawyer stood as a pillar of strength, detailing the years of financial and emotional abuse with precision and clarity. Devin and Mrs. Margo's lawyer attempted to paint me as an ungrateful wife, but the recordings I had made, the meticulous records of their controlling behavior, and the financial statements spoke louder than their attempts at deception. When the judge pronounced the verdict in my favor, granting significant compensation, the shock and defeat etched on Devin and Mrs. Margo's faces were images I would never forget. Outside the courthouse, Devin approached, now the image of a defeated man. "Katie, please, let's talk about this. We can settle it without compensation. You don't have to do this." I looked at him. The man I once believed would protect me was now just a shadow of his former self.
"No, Devin.
You had your chance. You chose to control and abuse instead of love and respect. This is the consequence of your actions." Mrs. Margo, her pride shattered, chimed in with a trembling voice. "Katie, please. I'm an old woman. Have some mercy." I shook my head, the final remnants of the emotional shackles falling away. "Mercy was what I begged for when you controlled every aspect of my life, Mrs. Margo. It's too late for that now." As Grandma Remy and I walked away, the weight of years of oppression lifted from my shoulders, I felt a profound sense of liberation and renewal. My journey of healing and reclaiming my life had truly begun. This victory was more than just a win in court. It was a triumph of justice, a confirmation of my strength, and the start of a new chapter in my life. However, the repercussions of the trial didn't stop with the verdict. The news of Devin's and Mrs. Margo's deeds spread far and wide, reaching Devin's workplace. His colleagues began to view him differently. Whispers trailed him wherever he went, and soon, he found himself demoted, a mere shadow of the man he once was. His reputation suffered greatly, leaving him condemned and despised for his actions. Mrs. Margo experienced her fall from grace. Once a respected figure, she now found herself ostracized, her name becoming synonymous with manipulation and cruelty. The decent circles of society she once frequented closed their doors to her, her past misdeeds casting a long shadow over her present situation. As for me, life began to open new doors. I was given a chance to start fresh, to build a life on my terms. The battle had been tough, but it cleared the path to a new beginning, a future where I was no longer defined by victimhood, but was the author of my own story. The final reckoning marked not just the end of a painful chapter, but also the promise of a new, brighter dawn. With each passing day, I grew stronger and more confident, ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead, free from the shadows of the past.